Okay, this is a continuation of the 3-point lighting tutorial we were looking at. In this tutorial though we're going to look at creating a rendered 360 turntable of our model, and then we're going to add details of this such as the wireframe of the model, the polygon count or triangle count, the texture size and the actual textures themselves. Okay, now you should already have your file from when you finish a 3-point lighting tutorial, but if you don't, you can work from this one. Plus with this one I've included a model with textures as well, so it's a model presentation.max. Okay, so first thing to note is if I just open the material editor, so you see we've got a set of materials here. Should have named all these before I started this really. And I haven't really set up these shaders properly. That's something for you to mess around with. If you are going to do your rendered turntables in Max rather than using something like Marmoset, then you want to make sure that you actually set up your materials properly. So you want to make sure you've got a bump with a normal bump, then you can set the level of bump here. You'll want to make sure that your specular colour is applied. If you've made a specular level map, then apply that too. And also you can tweak the glossiness here as well, if you haven't painted a map for that. And if you're not using specular level, you can also use this number to ramp it up. So it's very important you get your shaders set up as equal to what they would be like in a real-time scene. Okay, so once we've done that, we want to set our render resolution. So I go to rendering, render setup. And at the moment it's set to 640 by 480. Now we don't want that, we want HD, and we'll do HD 720. Feel free to do full HD for your final videos, but for this tutorial we're going to do HD 720. Okay, we want to make sure we're in mental ray, which we are. Okay, so in our viewport we want to set our save frame on so we can see exactly what it is we're rendering. You can see there's already a camera in the scene, so you want to press C on your keyboard to come to camera view, P for perspective. If you press C, that will go to your camera. Now I'm just going to right click on the background thing and hide it. We'll hide this one as well. Now, in order to make the camera rotate 360 degrees, we'll need to add in a circle. So that's in the Shapes tab and then Circle. Then we'll click and drag. I'm going to create a circle round about where the camera is because I've already kind of set up my frame. Then in this view I'm going to pull it up and again try and match it to camera as best as possible. Okay, and then what we do is we select the camera, you go to the motion panel over here, you go to assign controller, and you'll want to select position here and click this assign controller tab, and you'll want to select path constraint from the list. Now okay, see the camera view's changed, and that's because it doesn't actually have a path to follow at the moment. So you'll need to click on the add path tab and then click on the circle, and you'll see straight away the camera snaps to the circle. Now if you just hit play over here, or you can hit the / icon, you can see we're doing a full 360 of our model. Now when you click this add path, it'll add a keyframe at the start of your animation, then it'll add a keyframe at the end. So you want to hit this button here, which is time configuration, set this to 200. There you go, you can see our end frame there now. So now we're getting a full 360. So if we want to speed this up, well, let's just play this first. Now if we want to speed this up, we could pull this keyframe down, say 100. So it goes faster. And if we wanted to slow it down, we would add more frames on, say 300, and drag this right the way up to 300. You see, that's a lot slower. So I'm going to leave it on 200 for this demonstration. Okay, so if we just do unhide all, and we'll make the view big and hit play. Okay, so you'll notice that at the moment, well, let's just put this to 200 so it loops. Now you notice, like, look at the top of the head here, you see the way it's not actually lined up completely straight. It's a very important thing to get right when you're doing turntables, so we'll just rehide these, is to make sure that everything is lined up perfectly. In that way you get a perfect rotation, you don't get any of it moving up and down or zigzagging to the right and left. So to do that, what I do is I center all of my models. So if I select, say, this character here, I'll just unhide that because I haven't centered him yet. If I select the background, you'll notice the pivot is in the dead center there, and if I select this, you notice pivot's in the dead center and this is on 0, 0, 0. Okay, so in order to do that, we want to select the circle, then here we can put this to 0, 0, 0. Now Z, we still need the height, so we only want to change X and Y. Then we want to select the camera target, and again 0, 0, well, we're fine there, and we want the height, so we're actually okay on that too. So if we unhide all, again make the view big, let's see if that's now improved our motion. Yeah, that's looking much better. But let's just do the character as well, just to be 100% sure. So if I want to select this character now, I'm going to go to geometry here in this drop down and just select all the geometry there. We'll group him together, and I'm going to go to the hierarchy tab, effect pivot only, and just move the pivot down. That's the bottom of the model. So unhide all, and let's just zero him. There we go. Let's play the view again. Yeah, that's looking much better. So, okay, so now we have our rotation. We've got everything in the centre, everything's nicely centred. Our lighting's already set up, and we've got the animation on the camera. Now, one thing you might want to change before we move on to rendering is your start frame and end frame. Make sure you change that back. So you notice at the moment we're starting on the side of the character. Now you may not want that, you'd probably rather have it start, so if I just rotate, start maybe around there, maybe even a bit further over, say there. So we've got a nice profile shot, then the camera rotates around. So it's worth thinking about your start frame. That's the first frame people are going to see when they load this up, when they see this animation. So maybe I even want to start, say, there. Okay, so we'll save the progress. And the next thing you need to do is actually render a frame of this. So we'll go to our rendering render setup, and for the sake of this tutorial, and for you actually, is you want a render test, so you don't want your renders to take too long. So the first thing I do is way lower down the size of the frame. And make sure you've got, if you're on HD, it will actually lock it, so you'll see if I do 1280 it goes back up to 720, so no issue there with having to change both. Now if I come over to renderer, you see you've got quarter and 4, so that's the final quality of the image. The higher these are, the longer it takes to render. I normally do my final renders on say 1:16. For testing I'll do 1/4. Check our indirect illumination. So we are using final gather, but it's very low at the moment. So we'll leave it on that for this test. Okay, so we'll just hit the render button. Okay, you might notice that there's an issue with the texture on the hands. It's just because I couldn't find all the textures. It's from a project from quite a while ago. So please ignore any errors with it. Okay, so normally at this stage you'd spend a long time kind of messing around with your shaders, messing around with your lighting, making sure everything's set correctly. Like, common thing to do might be to turn off overshoot on these spotlights. I'm just going to set this to lights. Turn off overshoot. Do that on this one as well. Then try hitting render again. There we go, so we've got the nice dark kind of background now. So for this actually I'm going to leave overshoot on, maybe just tweak down some of these light settings though. And actually another important thing to do is to actually check your render from the back as well, because I'm using F9 there for shortcut to render, by the way. So make sure you render from the back, because you want to make sure that everything's actually visible. So I'm going to keep that say 0.3 then, because we need to be able to see the detail in the back of the model for this turntable. Okay, 0.35. Try turning off overshoot on that particular light source. Okay, so we'll stick with that for now. So we'll come over to our common tab in render settings and we'll set this back to 1280 by 720. Set the sampling up to say 1:16 and indirect illumination we'll set to medium. Okay, so we'll just save that, and then you want to make sure your range is set from 0 to 200, and in our render output we make a folder called frames, and in there we save as a TGA. Actually we have no need for the alpha, so you could save something a bit more kind of user friendly in terms of Windows, which is a BMP or even a JPEG as long as you don't edit it, but we'll leave it as target for now. We'll call this Jedi frame, so, and just hit save. And we don't need the alpha, so we'll set this to 24-bit. And now this is going to render all 200 frames, but as individual images. And the reason we do that is because there are a couple of reasons. The main reason is because there's no loss of quality. So when you take this into Adobe Premiere, you're going to have really high quality render images. And the second reason is if the render crashes or anything like that, or Max crashes, you'll have the render progress up to that point. If you did it as an AVI, you would lose, the AVI would be a corrupt file. Okay, so then we just have to hit, let's make sure I've done everything, and then just hit render. And then let's resume. If you pull this down, you can check file name for the output and stuff, and you can check the render settings you had too. You can't change them, but at least you can see if there's anything that you made a mistake on, so you're not rendering the whole thing without before you realise you messed up. Okay, so we'll let that render. Okay, so one thing with when you're rendering, you might notice your final gather stage is taking a long time when set to a higher quality. Well, to actually speed that up, you can actually calculate only the final gather that changes or hasn't been calculated before. And if you scroll down on reuse, you can turn this on. So you see you've got final gather map. Do incrementally add final gather points to final gather map. Pick a place to save it. I'll just call this Jedi render. Sorry, Jedi G. And now the first frame will take a while to render the final gather, but from then on, final gather, well, mental ray will only render the final gather points that haven't been calculated before. So this, initially your render time will seem to be the same, but once it's done one frame, you'll notice how kind of fast this is. So once you've made that change, then you can hit render and carry on. So notice here it's doing the final gather frame. You can actually check on your render stats here, so you can see 40% through, doing the final gather. And so you can see this is quite a long process, but with this step we've added in, the next frame is going to be much faster. Okay, so the next thing we're going to set up is the wireframe version of the character. Now we're going to keep the scene basically the same. All we need to do is change our materials. This is because we want to have the wireframe and the textured mesh together. So to do this, if we select the first material here, the body, and go to standard, and I want you to select a composite material. So if you just hit OK, and you want to do keep old material as submaterial. Okay, so you'll see now you've got the base material as body, so that's still there, but now you can actually add layers on top here. So you'd normally use an alpha to show these coming through, so you can add things like decals and stuff. But we're going to go into none and select standard, and then we're going to select wireframe here. Now you can see in the material preview that a wireframe is now sitting over the shader. Now the preview won't show it properly, but you can see in there that it's working. So let's just go to each, and in fact what you can do is select the wire material and call it wire, and then to go back up to the composite you can either go here and select body, or let's go back into wire, or you can press this arrow button here to go to parent. So I'm going to drag wire out here and drag it into this slot and select instance. Now we'll go to the other materials and assign composites to those. Keep old material as submaterial. And again a composite here. Keep old material as submaterial. And now I can drag wire into map 1 and make sure I select instance. Like so. Now if I want to tweak the wire in any way, I might want to change a colour, or I can change the thickness of the wireframe, I can just tweak this one material here and I'll update all of these. So to start with though, let's hit render on this. So I'm going to reduce down my image size. I'm going to lower the quality of the render as well, just to make it a bit faster for testing. So what we're trying to get from this is, obviously when you're producing a model turntable, the important thing is to show the textured version and the wireframe clearly. So you must make sure the wireframe is kind of fully visible. So you can see here I'm not really able to see the face, so I'm going to try changing the diffuse colour down to black and then hit render again. It's F9 on the keyboard for a quick render. Now obviously I am rendering at a lower resolution here and with lower image sampling, so I can take that into account. Okay, that's definitely looking better. Another thing I can do is actually lower the thickness of the wireframe, so I'll try reducing that to 0.8. Let's just try one more different colour. We'll try like a blue. Since there's no blue on this model, blue might work quite well. Okay, so that's looking reasonably good. I think though I'm going to stick with black for this wireframe, but you can stick with whatever you want. Okay, so once I've done that, I'll come over to Command Tab and reset my resolution, put my image sampling up to 116, range 0 to 200. Now I'm going to call this Jedi diffuse wire and save as a TGA. And remember, I don't need to have an alpha channel with this. Okay, so now I can hit render and render those out.